Hi, it's me, Imogen, again. It's been a while, but today I'm going to talk about Germinal by Emile Zola. I started reading this book quite a while ago, and it took me a while to finish it, but by the midway point, it was pretty impossible to put down, which I think is kind of the case with most Zola novels that I read. It takes a while to get into it, but then once I do, it's like a masterpiece. And this one in particular I would call a masterpiece. It's set in northern France in the 1860s, I must specify, in like a mining town, basically, among many mining towns. And it follows this young man who is one of the children from l'Assommoir, and he is looking for work and finds that he can get a job. In the mines, and to him, at first, in his desperation, he thinks, okay, that's fine, you know. Relatively, I mean, it's not the best job, but at least I can earn some money. Before kind of discovering as he works that the situation is actually incredibly dire and he isn't going to be paid much, and everyone around him working there is suffering. He develops a friendship with Catherine, who is a young girl working there, but she dresses like a boy so that even though she's a girl, she can still earn money for the large family that she lives with like 5 or 6 or so siblings. And when he realizes this, at first he tries to like mind his own business, but as things get worse and worse, as the seasons change and as the children grow older, very slowly, to the mother's despair, because she's desperate to get them all working and earning more money, he starts to realize that he can't ignore the situation and he can't just focus on himself, because from the humanity in his heart, he starts to become kind of like quite inspired to find a difference. And there's a segment in the novel where he begins to read more, and he talks to some peers who are like intelligent, and they're more well versed in like politics and history and philosophy. But of course, the path to revolution is not very clear and not very easy, and there's no guarantee that any of it will work out. And that's what I think is very unique about Germinal, because it's not just like a book where people get upset and they revolt and then everything's good again, you know, or it's not even like they revolt and that's the end of the novel. And going into it, all I really knew was that it was about a miners' strike. I didn't know anything else. I mean, I knew it was a Zola novel, and then I kind of found out that like there's a lot of death in it, but that's not really a surprise with him. I think that anyone who feels unhappy with the world or with governmental systems, and anyone who wants revolution should read this book, because I just think it is very empathetic to that perspective, but it's also not straightforward. And as it's a Zola novel, I find that its strongest points are the humanity within it. Now, my copy comes with an introduction by Roger Pearson, or however you pronounce his name, and he says that Germinal is a novel about people and about the people, about particular human beings and about humanity at large, and I agree with that. Now, I think that most of the novels are about people and about humanity, I believe. Obviously, sometimes it goes off the deep end and people are kind of crazy, but I think that's just kind of natural, and some of us are a bit crazy, and that's some of us do really messed up things, so he's not so far off, even if it is 19th century that he was writing in. But I think the thing about his novels that I enjoy the most is that they capture all like the really ugly parts of humanity. You know, there's like love and there's sexuality, and then there's like the really grotesque ends of both of these things. And he also, as he typically writes about poverty and people in not so great situations, it usually involves like basic needs like hunger and needing places to stay where you're safe and comfortable, and aging and children suffering, all that really fun stuff. But he captures it so perfectly and from a very sympathetic point of view, which I think is very unique to his style of writing. And I find that through this miner's tale of a strike, these miner strikes and their attempted revolution, he does it so well at like wrapping up all of those experiences and kind of having it kind of climax. There's a wonderful climax in the novel, and then the aftermath, which is like so rewarding when you get to it, because by the midway point of the novel, when you've been following these characters in the very empathetic way that Zola writes, it's a wonderful experience to read of it. But as he writes about the imperfection of human beings, I think that's what makes it so particularly fascinating. Because most of the characters are not perfect, but also most of the characters are written in a way that you can empathize and sympathize with almost all of them. Almost all of them. You know, that the kind of, there's this wonderful clash of like selfishness, which is natural to human beings, which is why we have such awful government systems, and why we have societal gaps which still plague us now. I think it's wonderful to read about that from such a faraway perspective, not in terms of it being fun exactly, but it does give you this feeling that your human experience has been experienced for a long time, whether that be more like give you more make you more invigorated to finding a successful, you know, end to it, or simply just to know that you're not crazy in experiencing these things and struggling with them. But overall, there is the big question through the novel, philosophically, I guess, might be the word, of if we are fighting for a difference and a change, is that actually going to result in a better world and a better society, or are we just doomed to this cycle of like destruction and chaos in our, you know, our very human ways and habits? And the characters themselves ask this question, and there's a lot of like back and forth of like characters knowing that they are not happy in their situations of hunger and deprivation, but then also not knowing if they can really believe in a better future either, or if it's even worth trying, because it's not easy. And he really highlights the fact that that desperation doesn't mean like doesn't result in a perfectly planned out way of overthrowing the government, you know, or your bosses, or the people who are actually getting all the money for all the work you kill yourself doing. It's like, even if you're aware of these things, it's not so straightforward. And so with that, I think it's just a beautiful novel. I think just the way that you can encapsulate so many aspects of human life in this novel, and the way that the narrative is so perfectly done, and even the ending is wonderful. It's really like quite horrible and nightmarish, but it's there's a glimmer of potential hope, I guess. But it's very ambiguous. So I think it's a very wonderful novel, and I think that everyone should read it. Thank you for watching. I hope I didn't ramble too much.